Hello everyone, a warm welcome to Wisdom from North. My name is Jannica and today I have Mary Rodwell on the show. Now, 30 years ago, Mary used to work as a midwife, a therapist and a nurse, and she was employed as a professional counselor at the National Health Service UK. Today, however, she is recognized internationally as one of Australia's leading researchers within the UFO phenomenon. She has written Awakening, and she has produced many award-winning documentaries about it. And she has also founded ACERN, which stands for Australian Close Encounter Research Network. Now today we're going to focus on star children and star seeds, since that's one of her main focuses in her work. Now Mary, all the way from Australia, welcome to Wisdom from North. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Jannica. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh yes, I saw you online doing this long lecture, and I've had many interviews about this UFO phenomenon before, because I think it's important that we get to know what's out there, and then we can make our own decisions what we believe in or not. And I thought you came with a lot of new information, especially about star children and star seeds and the new humans. But I thought before we go into that, can you tell us a little bit about what happened like 30 years ago? How did you get into this whole phenomenon?
Well, keep it very brief, I was a nurse and a midwife, and I went into counselling, worked in a medical practice, and I did a lot of different kinds of counselling over the years, from grief and bereavement, hospice, right through to relationships and what have you. And what's interesting with that is every now and again, people start to tell you strange experiences, with spirits or this kind of thing, which I've always found very interesting. And I've always been fascinated by what we call the supernatural. But my whole world changed when someone came to see me and they said, Mary, there are support groups for everything you can think of, but for this, they just think you're crazy. And he started to tell me that he had experiences where he woke up with marks on his body, felt he was being taken on spacecraft. His partner was having experiences. His children were having experiences. And he said, I don't know where to go. And he said, I heard you were open-minded. And he said, so can you help? And that really was the start of my journey into the whole area of what some people call abductions, others call contact with extraterrestrials, encounters, experiences. There's lots of different names for this. But for me, this was affecting a whole family. It was a human experience. They were scared. They didn't know what to do. And that's what counsellors do, isn't it? Support people through their experiences. So that's how I interpret it to begin with.
So you have researched 1,600 cases or so?
Well, over 2,000 now.
Wow.
And the difference is that the more people have seen my presentations, the more I'm getting people from all over the globe. People from Europe, of course, and Hungary, Poland, lots of places like that, Turkey, Uruguay, Asia, Hong Kong, because what fascinates me, despite the language difficulty, the information plainly is enough to get people to resonate and to connect to it. And that shows how important it is when people of other countries are looking to, with different languages to find information about their own experience. And this is what's been happening. Families with children that are having experiences that say, where can we go? Who can we talk about to this? Because in my country, I've got no one to talk to.
So what are star children and what are star seeds?
Well, it's a name that I came up with after I realized that many families, it wasn't just one person in the family having experiences. It was often the partner or the children, and they would be talking about going through walls, being up on spacecraft, learning things on the spacecraft, and many of them weren't actually frightened of the the star beings at all, even though many of them were very strange looking. They seemed to accept them as part of their family in an extended sense.
Are they talking about this in a conscious state or in...
Oh, absolutely. With the children, I don't do hypnosis.
Okay.
This is conscious recall of their experiences. I have interviewed, and I will be showing it on my presentation soon, of an 8-year-old boy in this room who told me that his other family is mantid insect-like beings, and they are his other family, and he's not frightened of them. He goes up on the craft and he communicates with them. He talks about going with school friends up on the spacecraft and learning things where he uses his mind. And he's taught mathematics and complex things. And he even said to me, some of them are so complex you wouldn't understand. Now, this is talking to me, telling me I wouldn't understand them. And this is the fascinating thing with the children, is that they have information. They haven't seen talk shows, they haven't read books, and yet they have this amazing information about these beings they're interacting with.
So how many do you think are experiencing this in the world?
In terms of understanding that they're having encounters, or the ones that perhaps don't realize they're having it, is, I think that I'm being contacted by a very small percentage of a very large percentage, because many people don't realize what it is that's happening. They think they're just a bit crazy. They think there's something wrong with them. They think maybe it's just them that is having it. And yet, I am getting people from all walks of life, lawyers, doctors, nurses, psychotherapists, social workers, housewives and farmers and school teachers. And they're saying, I've always felt different. I didn't know why I didn't connect to people on this planet. I've always felt like I didn't belong here. I felt like I've been adopted because I don't connect with my siblings very well. And I've always had abilities, such as seeing spirits. I can see energy fields around people. I know I can do healing. So they're talking about what we call, all these other multidimensional experiences that we call clairvoyance, clairaudience, all those names that we give to people who see spirits. But they're experiencing all of this, and that it is directly related to their interactions with the beings on the craft.
So these star children, are they children that have had experiences, while star seeds is something different, that they're like a hybrid in a way?
I think we're all hybrids.
Okay.
The reason I say that is because I've looked at the DNA, and in the DNA we have anomalies that show that we have had, if you like, insertions of genetic material, and they can't explain those insertions in our genetic material. So we understand that this is very likely from extraterrestrial beings that have been visiting this planet all through history. We used to call them the gods, but not the big G, it's the little g. They're really extraterrestrials, and they did definitely do genetic engineering. But what's happening now is that each generation is more aware of their experiences. Each generation is an upgrade from the previous one. More aware, more able to understand things, more able to connect to the non-physical world, whereas the older star seeds in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s or whatever are coming from a different generation where they didn't fully understand what was going on. Whereas these children, no, they don't need regressions, they don't need hypnosis to find out. They actually have conscious memory of going on spacecraft and learning things. So that's the difference.
So what are some of these experiences that the children have? What are they saying? I'm curious about what they are experiencing and learning on these craft ships. texts, and like what kind of beings that they are seeing?
Well, in terms of beings, sometimes they are humanoid like we are. Sometimes they can be very strange. They can be the little grey beings that they with the big eyes, or little green beings. They may be dwarf-like beings. They have sometimes lizard-like beings, cat beings like lions, feline beings.
Really?
The mantid beings, which are like praying mantis, insect-like beings. There may be some that are just energy, like they call them light beings. Some religious people might call them angels. So there's a huge range of different types that people see. And for some of them, they feel very connected to some of them, like their family. They're my star family. And the children particularly, this little boy who I've interviewed and filmed, who was 8 when he spoke to me, told me when he goes up on the spacecraft with some of his school friends, he said, I'm in a kind of container. I can't move. And I said, well, what are you doing there? Do you know why you're there? And he said, yes, I'm having my yearly medical exam by blue beings that are outside. Their blue beings have picked us up and they are checking us out. And then he said he goes with his school friends into a group on the spacecraft, and they use their brain waves to do mathematics and create things in the air with their mind. So that's school friends. And he said some of the children are not human. They have big eyes and they're different. But we all learn together, and we learn about things to do with black holes, time and space, to do with the real history of what our origins. He talks about feeling, remembering some of his other lifetimes. And this is an 8-year-old boy telling me this. You know, he's not, you know, it's really strange when an 8-year-old is telling you, like the picture behind me, he recognized it. Oh. And he said it's like he's been on craft through something like this, which he said takes you to other worlds.
So how can we know that they're not fantasizing? I mean, they're children.
Well, there are a number of things. He talked about things that many others have spoken about. So when you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 12, 15, 20, all speaking about similar experiences, then you have to take it more seriously. This little boy made a trilling sound that he said the mantid beings make. I was speaking to a town councillor in England who's in his 50s, who also says his family are the mantid, and they make a trilling chirping sound, which is exactly what this 8-year-old was telling me. But this gentleman lives in England and he's a counsellor. And he also described things about the mantid that the little boy also told me about certain things that they did. And it was identical to the 50-year-old man in England. They've never spoken. And yet they actually said the same things. An 8-year-old and a 52-year-old man who has never, ever communicated. And then I have others, another 7-year-old girl coming out with a trilling sound that the mantid make, because she sees the mantid, and described the same thing. So when you have not only children but adults saying the same thing with each other, then you have to take it seriously, because they're not communicating. It's not written in books, and yet they're saying the same things. So
yes, and they were saying the same thing. I think there were 2 people saying something about the Sphinx in Egypt, and I thought that was very interesting, because I've always wondered about Egypt and the pyramids. Can you talk a little a bit about that?
Yes, well, when I first heard a 5-year-old describe to his mother, and this is language that a 5-year-old doesn't use, he said, they changed the density structure of objects large and small, and they levitated the stones into place and placed a crystal on the top to communicate with other worlds. And in the Sphinx is information they hadn't found yet. Now, this is a 5-year-old telling me this. I end up speaking to a lady in her 70s in Adelaide, in Australia, and we were chatting. And she said, I know about the pyramids, Mary. And I said, what do you know? And she said, oh, she said, the stones were levitated into place. And she said, and they placed a crystal on the top to communicate with other worlds, which was identical to what the 5-year-old little boy had told me. And then I got told by someone else, another 8-year-old boy, that the beings that made the pyramids or were involved in the pyramids were the cat and feline beings. Oh. And of course, there you've got the Sphinx.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it. Okay, so why are these beings looking like insects? To me, that is frightening. Why do they have containers like that? And especially if they can transform themselves in front of the children, why wouldn't they do that? Show themselves as beautiful beings instead of insects.
Well, what you have to understand is the children aren't confronted by that at all. This little 8-year-old says it's his family. He's not frightened by them at all because they are ones he remembers from another life where he was one of them. So he doesn't feel confronted by it. What we have to understand is we live in a universe of thousands upon millions of planets that are able to sustain life. And why does life have to be identical to us? Why doesn't intelligent life have to be perhaps a whole range of different things? Some people see crystalline beings. Why do we have to think that, sentient beings have to always be biological and look this way? That's our very limited way of seeing the universe, when there may be and is all forms of life. And some of these beings can change their image depending on how much you're ready to see. And some of them can change themselves from a form to light if they want to. But sometimes it's because they want us to realize that we've got to accept all forms of intelligence. And you know how judgmental human beings are. If we see someone with a different shaped face, different color hair, different color skin, different color eyes or whatever, we are extremely judgmental and we judge people by how they look and where they come from. We've got to get over that very limited view of how we even view each other, let alone a matrix of incredibly different intelligences with all sorts of forms and shapes and what have you. And I think it's part of our lesson to learn to accept each other, no matter what we look like. Because in the end, it's what's in here that matters, not what we look like. That doesn't matter, does it?
I'm just thinking that this is coming more and more, and I'm realizing there's so much more information about this now. And I'm wondering, is there really a change in consciousness, do you think? Because it seems like, just with the internet, I get these stories all the time. I can just go on YouTube and I find like thousands of the same stories as you're saying. And I'm thinking it must be, it can't be a coincidence that is all coming out now.
I'm sure it isn't. I think everything is if you like, a way of waking us up to a greater reality. We've reached a point, I believe, in human history where we really have to start to realize we're connected to everything, that we're not separate, and that everything we do affects everyone else. And by becoming aware of that, we change. We start to care about and have compassion for everyone, no matter who they are. And what I believe is happening is because we've now got technology at a point where we could destroy ourselves, these intelligences are giving us a very big wake-up call, because they're saying, I explain it like you've got a 3-year-old boy with a loaded gun and he doesn't realize he can kill people. And we've got to get that 3-year-old to be a 50-year-old very quickly, so they realize the potential of this loaded gun that we have in terms of, the destructive power of our bombs and all the things that we can do to harm one another. We've got to wake up and realize, because these beings are saying that when we let off one of these bombs, it affects everything, not just this planet, but the dimensions. and we're affecting them. And they don't want school children out in the galaxy. They want adults.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so these to get back to the star children again, it seems like they have a higher consciousness. And I think you said somewhere that they lose some of their light when they come into school, the three-dimensional school.
Yeah. Yes.
So, but how do you think can we deal with this? I mean, if a children comes and talks about this, I mean, it really doesn't fit in the school system. I mean, I'm studying to be a teacher myself, and I I can feel like there's so many rules about how you're supposed to do things because the law says this and that, and we have a book that says that you're supposed to do this and that. Now, how can me as a teacher, how can I deal with this if the children are completely different, coming with this different way of perceiving things?
It's a good question. And it's one that I have many teachers in touch with me saying that they are very aware that they have star children in their classes because they too are star seeds. So they can recognize these children and they see that they're very much more aware, that they are very intuitive, often highly intelligent. As a 10-year-old boy in England said to his teachers, "You teach in a linear fashion, I think in spirals."
Right.
And he explained to me that he was given formula at 7 or 8 to create portals. So what this 9-year-old told me, who lives in Northern Europe, not too far from Norway. I can't give you the country, but not too far away.
Okay.
And this 9-year-old speaks 3 star languages. Her mother actually is a linguist, and her daughter speaks 3 star languages. And one of them, the child says, actually, she says heals water. In other words, it purifies water, this language that she speaks. It's a frequency. And her mother said the water actually tastes different. But this little girl said to me, going to school is not healthy because they have all this knowledge that they're learning from their star families. And when they go to school, what they're learning is very childish, very limiting, and it is programming them into a very narrow reality when they are experiencing a multidimensional one, where they're seeing spirits, where they're seeing ETs, where they're seeing energy. This little boy told me, the 8-year-old told me, he communicates with animals and that he can see energy fields in people. He can see when they're angry. He can see when they're happy. And, all these things that the poor teacher has no idea these children are perceiving. And the children think it's normal because they think everybody can. So they don't understand when someone says, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
Because to them, if I see it, then you must see it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the problem. That's the problem I come across, that I'm not seeing these things, but then I meet so many people talking about these things, but I'm still not seeing them myself, And we're brought up to this belief that we need proof. Otherwise, I just have to believe. It will just be a belief system in a way that I believe what you're saying, but I don't have that experience. So it's difficult for me to stand in the classroom and say, well, there are, star children and cosmic world is huge and there's so much more. I mean, it's difficult, and I see the issue. I see the challenge there. But I think maybe just a more openness, not saying what's wrong or right, just saying that, yes, there might be a lot of life out there. We just don't know yet all the details.
I think that's very important. What this little girl said to me via an interpreter, she said, "Mary has big ears." And her mother laughed and translated to me. She said, "What my daughter means is Mary listens when most adults don't listen. And it's about listening to them."
Right, taking them seriously.
Yes, yeah. Saying, what is it like for you? What do you see? How do you experience things? So that the child then feels safe enough to say, well, this little boy in an interview I did, he explained that when he was up on the craft with two of his school friends, what had happened. And I said to him, well, did you ask the other two boys if they remembered going on the spacecraft with you? And he got really upset. And he said, well, I wanted to, but our mummy wouldn't let me. And his mother explained. She said, I was afraid that if he went to school and started to ask the boys about whether they remembered being on the spacecraft, he may get into trouble, or they may think he was strange if they don't remember. Or he just people start to think there's something wrong with him. So she was trying to protect him, but he was actually quite cross that his mum wouldn't let him ask the boys because he wanted to.
Yeah, of course.
You know, he said, I wanted to find out if they remembered as well, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the problem.
Yeah. So are these physical experiences, or are they actually going into another dimension on these crafts?
I think there's a bit of both. Sometimes they are physically missing from their beds, and they will go and sometimes they have medical exams, they will be checking them out health-wise or whatever. Sometimes they go with their spirit form, astrally, out of body, so that their body will still be in the bed, but they will actually go onto a craft astrally in just their astral form. And the children understand that as well, that they'll talk about the other part of them, or their essence, and this is how people describe it, and that happens to adults too. Sometimes the physical body will go, sometimes they will just be aware that they've gone. And one lady described very clearly that when she went astrally, it was like a ball of light that left her physical body. And what's interesting is, in many of the cameras now, when you take pictures, you might get the orbs. Right. I think some of them are spirits.
Yes, I really want to interview somebody about orbs, because that's a very interesting phenomenon. So, on these crafts, are there just one species on every craft? I feel like my mind have to picture this. Or are they collaborating? And where do they come from? Is it different star systems?
Yes and yes. There are sometimes when people are on the craft, they will describe maybe the little grey beings, them tall blue beings. They will see maybe mantid beings or cat beings. They may see 3 or 4 different species, and they all have different roles. Some are, I think the mantid beings, the insect-like ones, are master geneticists. So they do a lot with the genetics and DNA. And others, are there just to collect somebody and bring them and take them back safely. So they sort of escort them, so that there is a cooperation between a number of different species, and some seem to have different specialities. And yes, they come from places, they say, from the Pleiades, Arcturus, Orion, other dimensions. And some of these beings will say they're interdimensional.
Okay.
And some of them interdimensional, so that they are from another dimension. Some are.
Okay, but some are not. Some are physical?
Some are physical and solid and come from the third dimensional world as well. And we also may be visited, and this is probably going to be difficult for some people to take on board. I'm very far down the rabbit hole now.
Yeah, I understand.
And we believe that some may actually be visitors from the future.
Yeah, I heard that before, because time is an interesting thing, because there's no such thing as time, right? I mean, we're seeing it in a linear way, but it's actually in a circle or happening at the same time. Yes. Without me or my brain understanding that. I've been discussing that with my family, and some of my family members are like, no, I just can't get that. But part of me does understand it, that we're living everything at the same time, but then that means that everything is just now, and we're all just one.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I try and explain it, how I understand it, is if the soul is the palm of the hand, aspects of the soul are the fingers going off, experiencing different things, but all at the same time. The soul is still experiencing them. And maybe there's multitudes of things we are doing as a soul. We think that we can only do one thing at a time, but maybe our soul is extremely clever and can be existing in a I always see it as like up all on top of one another,
right?
So that we're existing all at the same time, all on top of one. That's how I sort of imagine it.
I've heard that before, actually.
Past lives and every life is all like there, and we can access it through hypnosis, because I do hypnosis, and in the hypnosis people go into past lives, and sometimes they go into past lives where they're not human, where they're on other planets, in different forms. And it can be confronting if someone isn't aware that a past life can take them to another planet where they see themselves as maybe a purple being, and with a strange complexion and a different form. And it can be quite confronting for them to realize that not all their lifetimes were on planet Earth.
Right. So what about teachings? Because I'm very into listening to a lot of teachings online, and I'm a seeker trying to find answers to, what's the best way of living, or because I'm very curious, and I constantly have something that my mind is working on, and at the same time I know it's not about being in the mind, it's about being in the heart. But have some of these children come with some teachings how to, be kinder to each other, because we do have this ego. I mean, even if I know I'm supposed to be good, I'm supposed to behave, and everything is supposed to come from the heart, sometimes I'm not just behaving well, because I get angry, frustrated, all these things. They're there, they're very real. So do they have some teachings on how to, evolve as human beings?
Well, the children, that some of them I've spoken to, tell me that they've come in as teachers. And although they're very young in human terms, some of their awareness is quite incredible. This 9-year-old told me that human beings are amazing, but they don't realize how amazing they are yet. And they have to believe it first. But she did say that her little brother would be a teacher as well. And they've come in to show us a new way. And the new way is, I think, first of all, they are explaining to us our potential, that we have incredible potential, but we have been shut down over history through programming from our potential. As a child, everything is possible. You think you can fly, you think you can do all these things. What she's saying is, we have to now understand that a lot of things we thought we were taught were not possible are actually possible. So we've almost got to deprogram ourselves before we can reach our potential. But they all come in with a message of how we think is really important. That if we think positively and we think lovingly and we think and we care and have compassion for one another, that is the way forward, because too much on this planet is about greed and power and control, and it isn't about caring for one another. We really do need to change it all, because it's not a healthy way to live. People are too stressed out. They are very materialistic. They think, they only care about themselves a lot of the time, because that's why they've been programmed into this mindset that you have to, this is what you've got to do to be successful. You've got to have the car, all these things. When in fact, it's actually the reverse. It's about following your heart. And, that is ultimately one of the things for me in terms of my journey, my spiritual journey with this, was the more that I worked with people in regression, where they went into other lifetimes, I would take them past the death sequence of that life, so that they would see their body see their body as dead, and they would see their spirit come out of their body and be in a realm where everything was different, where they had loving people around, or loving spirits around them. And I would say to them, what did you learn in that life? And they may say, I learned compassion, or I learned about limits, or I learned about whatever it was. Next lifetime, I want to learn different things. So they talk about coming into an experience, a life experience, with certain lessons they want and certain things they want to learn. And each one has a different plan. So it's, I believe the soul chooses the plan for each life. And in that, they, you know, some may say, I want to be, I don't know, in a family that is very poor. I want to be, I want to learn what it's like to be limited in that way. I want to have certain challenges that will help me to understand compassion, to understand about kindness or whatever. So creating a map or a jigsaw for themselves that will teach them what they want in that lifetime. And I feel now that that's what we do as souls. We come in with a mandate, with a plan, and we've chosen it. We've chosen who we want to live with, who our parents are, what we want to experience. And through that, we grow as a soul, as a spirit. And so for some, they will go through life just doing the same old things and not do a great deal of growing. But some of us want to understand our soul journey. We want to understand our spiritual journey. And those that have experiences like this tell me they had an agreement with their soul family to come in and have interactions with different beings to help the planet wake up, to help people wake up, to realize we're not alone. So that's part of their plan, their soul plan.
Yeah, because I'm thinking when they're learning so much, I mean, about mathematics and everything, I mean, they could revolutionize a lot of things here when they grow up.
And that's the plan too, is that we need new technologies. We need a better way of living on this planet and taking care of it. I had a 16-year-old tell me that he could build interstellar craft. And I said to him, he's a young man who lives in America. And he said to me, I said to him, how did you know how to build these craft? And he said, in another lifetime, I used to build them and I remember.
Huh.
So he'd remembered a past life where he used to do that. He also told me he can create technology to help with the pollution on this planet. And he's 16. And he's aware of his origins. He says he comes from Arcturus and that he's come in human form to help this planet.
Wow.
And he's completely aware of what his job is.
Yeah. And you've been... sorry.
Go on.
You've been in contact with a girl called Tracy Taylor?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
and she's like, it seems like she's writing a lot about her experiences and drawing as well, these amazing drawings.
Tracy I've known for probably about 15 years now. She was only a young woman when she brought all her drawings and showed me these amazing geometric drawings.
Right.
And she said, I used to go on spacecraft, she told me, when she was 5 years old. She remembered going on spacecraft. She remembered at 15 realizing she could heal with her hands. And then she said, I found information in my head telling me that I had been one of these beings and I'd come in to help with the planet. And she said, and that we were created by extraterrestrials. She said, that wasn't what I was taught, but in my head I had this information. And she said, I didn't know what to make of it. But she also does something that many star seeds are doing, which is incredible, including small children, writing strange writing, coming out with these languages and drawing the beings or drawing these multi-dimensional type pictures. You know, that I've got one here that is one of Tracy's. Look, this is sort of this one here. This is one of hers.
Wow.
Look.
Yeah. Wow.
Really complex.
Yeah, very.
And what these are, they act like sacred symbols, like, you know, the crop circles in that we see. They act like a catalyst to our psyche, to trigger awakening. So it's almost like we're giving our higher self, our soul self, reminders of who we are and why we've come. So when I've had people listen to the star languages, in my presentation, some say, after that, I started to speak them.
Really?
Or I started to write. As soon as they heard it in the presentation, it sparked something in them and they recognized it. And some would get very emotional and start to be really touched and cry because it touched their heart in some way they didn't understand. So I believe these things are expressions that are there to act as catalysts to wake us up. And, you know, whether it's the artwork, whether it's the languages, whether it's the music, all of these things, crop circles, all of these things are getting us to take notice and saying, this isn't just a doodle. This is something special. And when you've got 3-year-olds doing strange scripts, 3-year-olds doing mandalas, you're saying, why are kids doing this? You know, children are doing this.
Yeah, and still, I don't read about it in the newspaper.
No, because who's going to, you know, even the parents say to me, my child, why are they doing this? You know, what is it? Why do they, and they will explain that this is something about helping the planet, and they all say, helping the planet to wake up. That it's, this little girl of 9 said, I'm here to help my family awaken. And she's not. And she's very aware that's her job. So they know what they're here for, these children, and they don't need you to tell them. They tell you, not the other way around.
Yeah. So is this what you're writing about in your new book that's coming, The New Humans?
Well, I've got 2 books on the go, but yes. The trouble is with writing books is they take so long because, you know, you've got to do so much editing and what have you. And I have realized that a lot of this information is important now. And that's why I do a lot of presentations, why I go and do the conferences, like I'm doing 3 in England. I'm flying to England in a week's time. And I'm speaking in Glastonbury and Marlborough and West Yorkshire, and then in Paris in September. I'm speaking about this more because it reaches a lot more people, and people don't always, you know, by the time I've written the book, I've got a lot of new information. Yeah. So it's like, it's constantly, so it's happening so fast now. And I feel like it's more important that I do things like this than I'm spending days and days writing it all down, although I will do that as well. This is far better because the information is getting out now rather in a year's time or 2 years' time. So
is something going to happen? Do you think there's going to be a more specific shift in a way that we will really know that this is for real? Because it's coming in a subtle way. I mean, yes, I'm doing these interviews and I hear people are talking about it, but I'm still not experiencing it myself, and I would love to, you know. My mind would really love to have the evidence. Do you think it will come a time?
I agree with you. I would love to have myself, you know, have the experiences my clients have, but I don't. All I know is that when you get enough people saying the same thing, you've got to take notice of it. And I have seen strange lights, and I've seen a lot of those, and orbs and all those kinds of things. But I would like an ET to walk through the door and say, how do you... You know, I'm from planet Sirius, or yes, please.
Yeah.
I've put the order out, you know, but it hasn't happened yet. But the sightings are happening exponentially now. Everywhere, people are taking pictures of craft and lights. Every 6 minutes around the globe, someone's seeing a UFO. Every 6 minutes.
Wow.
So that's how common it is now. And what people are telling me that are sensing the future, sensing what's going to happen, are saying that they feel something is very close. Okay. Something about, and some call it an event where the population will get a lot more evidence. How that's going to be, we don't know. But there's a real sense that we're very close to that.
Interesting.
Whatever that is.
So are the ETs among us? Like, are they walking on the earth as well?
Yes, I believe they are. And some of them are very much like us. so you would not know that they were not actually born here on this planet, because they look very human. You may just think they look feel they're slightly different. Maybe their energy feels a bit different. But yes, and that's what scares a lot of the governments, because they don't know if they've got a few of them in their government and they don't know they're actually here. But certainly there are beings that are not from here that are worth walking on this planet. And you would not know the difference. You would not know.
And they are here to help us and to awaken us.
Well, I believe with all the information that I have from all the people that have contacted me in my regression work, that primarily the ones that are interacting with us and assisting us to evolve are very positive. There may be others that are self-serving, but
yes, we've heard of them. The Greys especially.
Well, you see, the thing is, everybody puts the Greys into one basket, but actually, one lady said to me, there are 165 species of Grey.
Wow.
So, it's like taking one human being off the planet and saying, this is human beings. One being is not every one of them.
Okay.
So we have to be careful about our judgments, because we don't know what we don't know.
Right. All right. Wow, Mary, this was interesting. It's so huge, and it's like my mind is constantly opening up to new concepts, which is very interesting. Is there something you want to say in the end?
I would just like to, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to more of the public, and hopefully for some of them this makes sense. I hope that it will get them on their own journey to start exploring this, and not to take my word for it. Go and find out for yourself, because that's the best way to come to an understanding. Just realize we are definitely not alone. And one day, very soon, I think most people are going to realize that. And to be honest, I think that's pretty wonderful, because I would hate to think we're the only species in this universe, because let's face it, I'd like to think there are some that are a little less warlike than us and a little bit more loving.
I agree. I like the idea too. Thank you so much, Mary, and have a wonderful trip to England, and good luck with your work.
Thank you again. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Take
you
care.
for watching, guys, and much light from Australia and Oslo. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.